let's figure this out. What is happening with the free-to-play stuff?
So it's been a few months since we last checked up on Throne and Liberty, this being the upcoming MMORPG that, while boasting quite a few interesting systems and features, unfortunately enough seemed primed for failure. After hosting a beta this past summer, reception was almost unanimously negative, a result of its poorly implemented combat, autoplay features tailored for mobile, and monetization that can make even Lost Ark or Black Desert blush. Interest and excitement for what at one point was one of my more anticipated upcoming MMOs quickly ground to a halt, which was a real shame because Throne and Liberty has some seriously cool features, boasting a massive seamless open world, 0 loading screens, instant fast travel, while also supporting what got me simultaneously, and it all looks pretty good too. In fact, visually, I think the game is solid across the board, and from some of the raw beta gameplay that we saw, it has some great clarity and render distance, making the open world full of tons of players look all the more impressive. They've got the expected assortment of biomes, fantasy, and medieval-inspired MMO locations with both PvE and PvP offerings. One of the more interesting features of Throne and Liberty, though, is how the weather and time of day directly impact the world, players, and enemies. So for example, when it's raining, it'll fill up certain bodies of water, like you can watch a small puddle turn into a pond. Also,
there was a stuff that was kind of cool about
something like a fire elemental will get debuffed when it's raining, making them weaker, while other enemies might get stronger. Player abilities are affected as well, so a mage's lightning shock might be single target most of the time, but during a rainstorm, it actually becomes a chain lightning, striking several targets. All of that are just a few examples of what can happen during rainstorms, but the same is true for time of day. So for example, there will be certain enemies who only show up when the sun is down, like skeletons or zombies or ghosts. Or there are dungeons that will only open when the moonlight hits it. And then beyond all of that, there are a few other really neat things about Throne and Liberty that include these world events where players and guilds compete to do whatever the objective is. To go along with its big, seamless, massive open world, there's tons of traversal features. And it also features a classless system where character abilities are based on what weapons you use and which skills you pick from those weapons. And that is just a list of some of what I love in RPGs. What's really cool about Throne and Liberty. However, as I just said, a beta test took place this summer and reception was not good. Not because any of that stuff that I just talked about isn't cool, because it is, but there were some other major glaring issues that bogged down the entire thing. For starters, combat felt bad, which is a pretty big deal considering it's what you spent a majority of your time doing. What was originally described as this hybrid action combat system turned out to be one of the worst implementations of tab targeting we've seen in a long while. Heavily rooted with no auto attacks and almost 0 movement skills made the combat feel incredibly
no, it's not officially out yet.
By all accounts that I saw. Then beyond the combat, the second major issue was the fact that many of the game's systems seemed tailored for mobile, which was later confirmed to be the case by the developer. They said that they added those systems with the mobile version in mind. These included auto just about every aspect of playing the game. There was auto attack and skill use, auto combat, which they called astral hunting. There was also auto pathing or auto movement, and all of those features would come together in what was fully auto play offline mode, where the game would just play itself while you were logged offline for up to 8 hours a day, although that was locked behind a paywall. Not surprisingly enough, which then leads us into the final thing that people were not happy with, and that was monetization. Even just in the beta, the systems were clearly in place for what looks to be a heavily pay-to-win, or at least pay-to-skip game. Timers and energy systems with purchasable items to bypass both those limitations. Highly valuable daily quests that were paywall gated. If you don't buy the subscription, you miss out on a ton of extra resources, materials, and currencies. And then an auction house whose main currency is a paid-for premium currency. That's right. We're not talking about using in-game gold. It's the literal definition
just like
of
AC and
for power in the game by buying powerful things with real money. It is for all of those reasons and others that despite the game having some really cool elements.
So my question would be here, if it's the auction house real money, are they making it well? Are they trying to pull a Diablo 3 scenario here? That would be the question here. Like, will the player get anything? Or is like the currency you spend real money to buy a currency, and then if you buy something from the player market or auction house, do then that player get that currency without spending real money? I have questions now. I do not know about that.
Elements, it didn't matter. Feedback to this summer's beta was predominantly negative. Bad combat, mobile design, and their monetization plans made it so that nearly every discussion around this game was not good. Well, the developer NCSoft and the game's Western publisher Amazon, they took notice and said, hey, we hear you. Thank you for the feedback. We're going to make changes. Now, shortly after, they announced a global release would be delayed from what was planned for this October until sometime in 2024. In the meantime, between the love again with the monetization stuff, they would be addressing all major issues raised by the community. They promised that they would be fixing combat, removing most, if not all, of the mobile design, and maybe they'd take a look at monetization to make it not garbage. Maybe.
The problem here with that is like, okay, the monetization thing is like, yeah, they could technically go in and change some stuff. They did it for Lost Ark. They could kind of do it here. But when it comes to a lot of this other stuff, it's like, I feel like the complaints, you know, the combat, the auto battle stuff, is like, I don't think that stuff going to change that much because it's like, if without the game, nah, it wouldn't really matter because it's like, even if we don't get the mobile version, the mobile still exists, and then at that point you're making like 3 different games for like, you know, the Asian market and then like the West. And a lot of the stuff that people complaining about, like, I feel like that'd be like super hard to actually go in and fix or change. Especially being Nick quote, well, you're going to be delayed like a year and a half or something, which it might be in the next year, which in return, I wonder what that means for Blue Protocol from Amazon, but I feel like the problems I had here are way too ingrained in the design, so I will believe some of that change it when it happened, if it happened. I honestly don't think it will. I think they're gonna like pull it back just enough, maybe, to get people not complaining as bad. You know, people will. For example, is like what happened with Lost Ark, but I don't know. I'm not buying the whole "we're gonna fix it" bit right now.
We'll see. All of this info was revealed during NCSoft's quarterly earnings call, which took place in August. This was basically them trying to stave off investor concerns. But at that point, all of the fixes that they were promising were just that, promises. Yeah. They were just words that they were saying. We hadn't actually seen any of it in action. Well, as of today, that has changed. In the months since our last video, we have seen improvements to nearly every gameplay and system concern that Throne and Liberty had. Showcases from the developer, new gameplay videos, and hands-on impressions from people who actually got to try these updates in action say that things have turned around. Gosh darn it, have they done it? Have they fixed Throne and Liberty? Possibly, at least. It seems like they have addressed, in fact, the major issue of combat and have removed most of the mobile features. As to the monetization, well, let's be honest here. It's still probably not going to be great. This is...
I'm so curious about changing the mobile thing. Like, that's the thing that I'm also curious about. Like, did that mean like the mobile version, since obviously there was going to be one, is that like drastically different, or have they found a way to like streamline it that will work on both platforms? Because, you know, if you're separating the games out to be at that point 2 separate things, is like that is not exactly ideal. Like, the ideal situation is be like the cross account stuff, you know, like what Genshin does for mobile and PC, but I don't know.
NCSoft, after all, and they've got a reputation of pay to win to uphold, right? But they are promising it's not going to be quite as bad here in the West. We'll see how that all pans out. And for argument's sake, let's just say they do fix the game and you end up checking out Throne and Liberty when it releases. You might be interested in the sponsor of today's video.
Oh, God.
LG's latest Ultra Gear OLED gaming monitor, or the 45GR95QE.
No console chat.
This is a for the game over these past few months. And we have seen a lot of
Okay.
link in the video description below.
There we
But
go.
now let's get back into Throne and Liberty. As mentioned, we have seen a lot of improvements for the game over these past few months, and let's just take a look at what exactly they have done. For starters, yes, they are fixing the game. It appears like they've addressed many of the biggest concerns and points of feedback from the beta. Combat, for one, is no longer completely 100% static. I can't believe it, but they've changed it to make it fluid and just more like a modern day tab target system. They have added auto attacks you can do on the move and changed it so that most abilities now have some built-in movement to them. So that situation during the beta where players would have to stand literally totally still to do any damage is no longer going to be the case. Now there will of course be some abilities
just like
and
WoW in
skills that do require
2004.
you to stand still. That is normal in any MMO or RPG.
Yeah.
Typically you will be sacrificing mobility for impact, whether that's harder hitting single target attacks or massive heals or casting area of effect abilities. Those are the sort of situations where skills might require you to stand still for a duration, and that is totally fine gameplay design. But now, at least in Throne and Liberty, standing still is no longer going to be the default for 99.9% of your attacks. Combat should
Yeah,
just
because let's be honest, the whole standing still thing is like, God, now you're thinking about it, like, I don't even think EverQuest was that bad, right? Because I want to say EverQuest, maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe EverQuest was stand still. Because I don't remember, I guess we're going to find out when we play EverQuest, but I don't remember what EverQuest is, like, how Final Fantasy 11 was, where you could, like, rotate around, and depending on the class, depending on where you stand, actually matter or not, mainly the thief. But yeah, if it literally just stand down and then hit, like, number keys now, that wouldn't be great. So yeah, I guess, honestly, if they are going to go, like, full-on tab targeting, which is kind of what it sounds like a little bit here, ideally, hopefully, it will be more in line with, like, Final Fantasy 14, WoW, you know, hopefully. Because them games are, like, very tag targeting, but at the same time, especially in 14K, there is a lot of movement around, you know, especially, you know, avoiding, like, AoE stuff. So hopefully they're leaning more into that, if
feel
anything.
much better. In addition to adding more freedom of movement while in combat, they have also removed character collisions in everything outside of PvP encounters. They have minimized player inertia when changing direction to make movement feel more responsive and tight. They've added more area of effect and cone attacks that players can perform without having to have direct targets. And they've also said that they are working on making weapon swapping feel more fluid as well. Now, the folks over at MMO went hands-on with this update and checked out this latest stuff at this year's Gamescom, of which they confirmed that combat felt significantly better, saying, even after the adjustments to combat, Throne and Liberty is not an action MMO. You do select targets with the tab key, and your character performs the normal attack automatically. You don't even have to press anything. However, the animations are smoother, and a lot can now be done and used in motion. Overall, my interest has increased massively due to the changes of combat and autoplay. So yes, the combat on the move, it's not full-on action combat. It's not even a hybrid action combat system like, say, Guild Wars 2 or ESO. It's a tab target one, but it's a tab target one that feels much more modern day with a lot more movement to it and shouldn't be nearly as...
Because to be honest, it's like, I know originally they were trying to sell it as more active, or more geez, I can't beat chat. More active combat. But I'm totally okay if they just go to tab targeting, because it kind of always seemed like it was like designed a little bit for that. Just for some of the original videos. So I wonder if that one of them thing that was just an ambition thing that they very quickly learned, like, oh, never mind, no. And, you know, or instead of trying to be good as a hybrid, it probably bet to, you know, be one or the other, you know. So I'm actually happy if that is the case, if they fully just going tag targeting. Any of them, I'm not the biggest fan of tag, but I do know it does have a place in MMOs, though.
Static as what we saw in the beta. Now, as for the mobile systems, basically all of the autoplay features, Amazon has completely disabled every single one of them for the Western release.
Really?
So the auto combat, known as astral hunting, where you click a button and AFK, that's gone. The auto travel, where you click a part of a map and the game moves for you, that is gone. And the fully offline autoplay mode, where the game plays itself when you're logged off, all of that is gone, at least for now, because they have said they will monitor this decision and might re-implement.
I want to know, does that mean mobile not coming out now in America?
Based on player feedback. Look, the biggest problem and the biggest concern with auto combat in particular is how much the existence of this feature impacts the grinding in the game. Things like the time it takes to level up your character, skills which are leveled by use in this game, the amount of currency that you get, etc. Basically anything that requires playing the game and is time gated in some sort of way, the time required to progress is likely to be inflated if the game has an autoplay feature, because hey, while you're not playing, you could just let the game run and grind, farm, and level up for you. This can make it so that the progress you do get while actually playing the game feels slow and far too extended out, and that was actually one of the biggest points of feedback from the beta, is that the game seemed very, very grindy because it has and was designed with autoplay in mind. Now, grinding is pretty much a part of any MMO, be it leveling your character, leveling combat skills, gathering resources for crafting, materials. All of it is some sort of a grind, but striking the balance in the grind for any aspect of an MMO or an RPG and making it so that it feels rewarding and not too punishing and not overly grindy, that is vital, and the presence of auto anything can really mess that up. I'm really not so concerned about auto travel. If you want to let us click on the map, and
I don't care about auto travel either.
Destination, that is fine, but I think auto
I know there's an auto
really
one for me.
Really hurt the feeling of
without running into a wall for 9 hours.
Combat, and it can put a lot of pressure on players to use auto combat and keep their computers running 24/7 as a result. And I'll say personally, I just really dislike when games have this feature for that reason. Now on to monetization. Now this one is a little tricky. Amazon has stated that there will be no pay to win in the global version of Throne and Liberty. The problem is that everyone has a different standard and definition of what qualifies as pay to.
Cause let's be honest, how we all with PSO at that point in time, and buying flat ticket, it paid to win. It ain't bad pay to win, but still. And honestly, on that case of monetization stuff, I wonder I need to go back to Lost Ark and see, because I haven't played it since launch, and see, did Amazon ever put in the stuff they originally took out at launch anyway? So I wonder if that's something to also keep in mind with that stuff will just over time start rolling back in.
To win. At the very least, we do know, and they have
said the trailer, it looked good,
the token that unlocks that 8 hours of offline auto grinding every day. And as I just mentioned, at least for now, they've removed any of those autoplay features. But what about the rest of the cash shop? Well, it doesn't look exactly great here. In a recent showcase for the game, it was revealed that the basic player auction house, where you buy and sell items with others, one of its forms of currency is the premium currency. Yes, the one that costs real world money in order to buy, that can be used in the player auction house.
I want to know how the player will
thing to keep in mind is that Throne and Liberty does feature a gear upgrade system, where you start with a base piece of gear and then you rank it up, going +1, +2, +3, +4, all the way up to +12. It goes higher and higher and it gets stronger and stronger along the way. But also, the higher you get, the more likely that piece of gear upgrade is to fail. And you betcha, they are almost certainly going to be selling the items required to reduce that.
Oh, absolutely, they will.
It's done in Lost Ark, just like it was done in Arcade and Black Desert Online. Pretty much every game that has gear tier upgrade systems like this will sell either the resources to make those upgrades or special items that reduce the chances to fail as you get into those higher tiers. It's pretty much guaranteed and expected.
Not every game at that point that have that stuff.
Although we have at least learned that for Throne and Liberty, failed upgrades won't break or degrade your gear. So that's nice, I suppose. On the plus side as well, it was revealed that the game will not feature
still
any
not good,
loot boxes or gacha mechanics, and instead will be focused.
Cause I would take research, collecting items and stuff to get upgrade over RNG any day of the week.
On selling battle pass subscriptions, cosmetics, and auction house transactions, as we just mentioned. Although this doesn't rule out that there could be some pay to win and pay to skip features, especially with whatever's tied into the auction house. No gacha is nice, but we do know as well that they're going to be selling pets that auto loot for you, which likely is going to be something you want, as it was in Black Desert Online. Looting manually, clicking on every single character was a pain. They don't have area automatic auto loot like say they do in World of Warcraft or a lot of MMOs, but they will sell pets that will do the auto looting for you. These can be purchased for real money. Likely there will be some unlockable in the game. We'll have to see where they fall in terms of how good those pets are, how many of them you can acquire, how effective they are. Are the paid pets better looting? Probably,
better in other
but not
places.
necessarily. It's not a guarantee. I will say, though, that with the combat and the mobile features seemingly addressed at this point, it does look like the game's microtransactions and monetization system is likely to be the biggest pain point, the biggest issue with the game, and I don't necessarily expect that's going to change.
Yeah, I don't either.
Even if the combat felt perfect and everything else was addressed and it didn't feel like a mobile game, and all those systems that I'm so excited about, those come through and really shine, even with all of that being the case, I do suspect the monetization, like a lot of games, will end up dragging the total experience down, which really is such a huge bummer because I envision a world where this game, where
MMO right now.
The combat's great, all of these awesome features and open world and the seamlessness.
Eventually,
and all
it all come crashing down.
And the PvP encounters and the open world dungeons and all this stuff. That whole package of the playing the game experience sounds amazing. And just imagine if the garbage cash shop wasn't also tied into it, to have a killer game.
Yeah, to make it a sub and call it a day.
Amazing game.
Give us a sub.
What's going to happen? And I think for that reason,
go back to sub MMO,
the
chat.
fatigue will set in with how the monetization is tied into progression.
I want sub MMO to come back, chat.
Is tied into what the season pass, how the monetization interfaces with the gameplay experience will likely be what eventually wears people down and pulls them away from the game, as we've seen time and time again. But yeah, I'm excited to play just for all of those features, to check out all of that content that sounds so awesome. That is really what will keep me around for at least a few weeks until I'm sick of seeing like failed upgrades because I'm not gonna buy the reduced chance to fail on my gear. Just not happening. Now, we have learned some other new details and features
not
about
happening
the game over
either.
these past few weeks. These were revealed through various
when we
events,
play this
interviews,
eventually,
live streams, and developer
I'm not
videos.
gonna put a
Starting
dime.
with
It's going
PvP,
100% free to play.
So we know that the game is going to have PvP, but they have shifted
we'll
to
see how
more
bad
of a
that is
PvE focus.
at the end of the
Instead,
day.
now there will be certain zones that are flagged for PvP every couple of days. Outside of that, the open world zones will be mostly PvE most of the time. So it seems like generic open world PvP, ganking, all of that stuff isn't going to be as commonplace as we were initially led to believe and as the game was initially designed.
I don't like the way
said
Final Fantasy
PvP is
11
still
did
gonna
it.
play a big role. There will be certain world events and bosses where PvP will happen. These events will be marked by this ring, and so long as you don't enter the ring, you won't be flagged and marked for PvP. But things like the idea of having unrestricted free-for-all PvP with zero consequences whenever the sun went down at the nighttime, that was originally a plan and something they talked about. That, for example, has been removed. But despite these changes, yes,
sad.
NCSoft has
because honestly, any of them are not a big like PvP person. And I know like doing like actual like PvP like with penalty, such as if someone kill you, they steal your loot, you lose affiliates, like you start getting into that type of stuff. Is I know that a big turn off for a lot of people. But for me, it's like one of them cases of like, and honestly, right there with the whole nighttime PvP stuff, is I know also that the other thing to come in there would probably the rotation, like, hey, I just want to get the quest done, but night outside, and then depending on how long night and day lasts. But at the same time, it's like, as long as it's done in a way, I get to the big thing. The concept of like PvP like that, I find interesting, but in practice, it just never worked though. Because like the thing that come into mind right now, like attraction shooters, you know, like Top Golf and whatnot, you know, like that type of like get in, get out type of deal. But at the same time, it's like I get it, like. You know, the avid person don't want to put up with that. But, man, I'd be down if that was the case, though.
The PvP is still a big focus. There will still be a ton of PvP content, both small and large scale. It's just less all-encompassing and more clearly indicated, so people who want to avoid it will be able to avoid it. We got some info on progression, specifically as a result of them moving all of those autoplay features. They made a lot of changes to how progression works in the game. These include significantly reducing the amount of experience required to level up, significantly increasing the experience rewards for major activities, events, and quests, adding more non-grinding missions, reducing the amount of time it takes to level up, reducing the resources and materials required for crafting and enhancing equipment, and adding more group-focused content such as dungeons that require people to actually be playing the game instead of just mindlessly grinding in the open field. And as discussed in that autoplay section, this is exactly what I was talking about. Because they had autoplay grinding, which meant auto leveling up and auto getting resources and farming currencies, they added extra buffer to all of the systems, requiring more resources for crafting, requiring more experience for leveling, requiring more currency to purchase things. They've toned all of that down in response to removing the autoplay features. If that's not as clear of an example as how autoplay can impact a game's progression system, I don't know what is. I mean, that's a clear-cut amends of it, and I'm really glad to see.
Yeah, you can look at any mobile game and see that.
And they've reduced everything basically across the board to compensate for that. Now, the most recent showcase for the game came just the other week at a big Korean event known as G-Star, where NCSoft held a 30-minute showcase at which we saw quite a lot. We got a pretty extended look at the combat system, the new improvements in action. I have to say, just even at a glance, this looks massively better than it was in the beta. As discussed earlier, it is more fluid, there's a lot more movement, and it feels and looks a lot more engaging. They also showed off some solo boss fights in what is called Tidale's Tower. That is like the boss tower climbing solo thing. They've showcased the improved UI, which is designed, they said, to look less mobile in response to beta feedback. They showed off some group dungeons focused on challenging encounters balanced for 6 players that they said will require the classical holy trinity of a tank, healer, and damage dealers, and they even showed off a few different large-scale guild boss events. And that's pretty much everything that's happened over the past few months since the last time we talked about Throwing in Liberty. And can I just say how relieved I am to hear that these changes have been implemented so quickly, and at least based on some early hands-on impressions,
yeah, they like implying it very much is a good thing.
Exactly how well this stuff was executed, because the Korean version of Throne in Liberty is launching in just a few weeks, but only in Korea. As of now, the Western release is planned for sometime in early 2024, but no specific window or date has been revealed. There's a good chance, I think, that we get further details next month at the Game Awards, as this does tend to be where we see a lot of developers and publishers come out with big announcements. And since they are planning early 2024, I wouldn't be surprised if Amazon has a more specific window in mind.
Yeah,
that almost
I'm with him on that. We'll probably
yes,
get a release date down.
Version launches, you are going to be seeing gameplay, you are going to be getting feedback and reactions.
I'm curious to see if they change the Korean version as well.
Game originally, because it was a Korean beta test that took place that didn't have an NDA. It's really, we're just like 2-3 weeks away from actually knowing how Throne in Liberty turned out. Again, the most important things to me are that the combat is a lot better and the removal of those mobile features.
Because usually it's not like one-to-one with like Korea. Usually,
that comes as a result
like a totally different game by the time we come to the West.
And as I mentioned earlier, if anything, I'm just expecting it to be as bad as we expect it. Now, no gacha and no loot boxes is great, but with that tiered level gearing system, with the auction house taking a premium currency,
I'm still curious about the auction house out with the currency.
The stuff that you see from so many Korean developed MMOs, it's just kind of par for the course. They're reining in some of it for the West, and there will be some differences between the Korean and global release of the game. I'm assuming a lot of it will carry over, if not for when the global.
And then also how much content can be staggered because of this as well now.
Years after it happens, but maybe at that point, a lot of you won't care anymore because you will have had your fun during the launch window, and that, if nothing else, is what I'm most looking forward to. I will jump in at release, I will play it. I'm looking forward to checking out the content that I went over in pretty big detail about what I'm excited about. There's so many cool things about Throne in Liberty. It will almost certainly be bogged down by the cash shop. I'll just ignore that and stop playing once it becomes a major problem. That is my current plan. It's too bad that we don't live in the world where that isn't an issue and we could just be excited about this game without any caveats, but that's just not the reality.
I feel like that's just gaming in general, to be honest.
That's going to do it for this update. Thank you for watching. All in all,
like every game for the most part have that sense of worry on it nowadays.
Comment below, helps engagement, and yeah, let me know. Thanks.
So, yeah, At night they saying they changing it. At night to see like some of the stuff like the combat stuff seem better. But I kind of feel like a lot of the other stuff is way too up in the L. And cause that's the problem you start getting into like this. Like when you start like taking stuff down and back and you know, changing for certain regions, especially when it comes to like monetization stuff. For example, when I'm talking about the auto battle stuff, it's just like that changed so much about the base of the game, let alone is it something that can easily be changed depending on how baked in it is. I'm not for sure, you know, if they're gonna pull that off. And then also then any if they do pull it off, like I said, that bring into question like how much content could be staggered. Is it gonna be 1-in-1 with Quia? Is it not? Because I imagine it would go Quia, and then a couple months later, it'll come out in the West and get, you know, North back down. And then at that point, you know, we're dealing with like release timing and, you know, MMO live and die by launches and what come in the 4 months. And then not counting all that stuff, we start getting into like what we're talking about the auction house, just like how exactly is that going to operate? It like if someone, you know, is it just people trading like real money with each other? I'm just like, say I spend $10 for the currency, and then I buy your item for $9. Could I then take that item and sell it for like $15? Or if you got the $9 and you had no currency, do you now have $9 of the currency depend on the auction house? So at that point, it boiled down to, are you pretty much like, instead of farming item for like the community of like the whole like money changing hand, are you just farming as a free-to-play player to try to get the currency from the whales? And also then at that point, it like, will the whales any want to spend money on that stuff? You know, would they be more interesting in, you know, buying like the cosmetic stuff or the enhanced stuff that may or may not be sellable? And then at that point, will like the weapons and armor and whatever else just become like pulling teeth to try to get any money from, especially if you're a free-to-play player? And then I ain't counting the whole thing of like, is that also getting into like any plan to do like Diablo where you could cash out? It's just like I have a lot of questions on that. And then on top of that, I know there's not gonna be a cape, but this is super hypothetical. But let's say that nobody buy the currency, that the player market just die. And since it is tied to real money, does that mean we're not gonna be able to trade because they're like, you know, the publisher and all of them are just trying to get them cut from the people that are actually buying the currency instead of, you know, allowing players to trade among themselves with it and just bypass all that? Like, I have a lot of questions for the auction house stuff. Like I said, I'm having a lot of flashback to like Diablo 3 and like a little bit of like the little like NFT games that well. It is obviously not NFT, but you know, still like the same field still stands on that. I will try Throne Liberty whenever it comes out in the West, and we will see. I'm honestly not expecting a lot from it, but then again, I don't bet a lot from a lot of Queen game for, you know, the obvious reasons. So like, it doesn't mean like it's gonna be horrible by any means, but at the same time, it's like, you know, that aesthetic choice and then I ain't counting like monetization stuff usually don't like aim directly at me and tickle my fancy in a way. I get to like Queen like production and dev stuff, like trappings, inner design usually kind of like so for me. I'm not like the biggest fan in general, not because of anything specific, just in like feeling and progression, like a lot of like little things like that. We will see. Like I said, I will try it and we will see if it's something we into or that could be something you know, we try and after a few days be like, I'm good. Or, you know, the whole game in the West should die within a year. Or, you know, get to bare minimum player base over here. I imagine you can do just fine Quia though. I don't see why you wouldn't. Especially with the tie to other MMOs out there previously in Quia. So we will see. We will see.